about Navratri fast, I created a group on 1st of October to cover this subject. And then I realized that a lot of people have a lot of misunderstandings about what this fast is all about, how to keep the fast, how to break the fast, and so on. So I decided to do this talk to clarify some of the things. If you go to YouTube and watch many videos on Navratri fast, they are very misleading. In fact, I came across some recommended diets for Navratri fast, which included 6 meals from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. And then the lady said, in case you feel hungry in between the meals, you can always have another fruit or a glass of milk. That is not what fast is all about. Fasting means not consuming anything which has a caloric value, which provides energy. Fasting requires us not to consume anything but water. Of course, thousands of years ago, we were not drinking tea and coffee. So our ancestors did not mention anything about tea and coffee. And many people have somehow adapted tea and coffee as if it is normal to have tea and coffee during fast. It is not. The idea is to give your body complete rest. And body should not be secreting any fluids that it does, whether it is in your stomach or in your pancreas. There should not be any activity that initiates such fluid secretion. So the only way to do fast is by not consuming anything. And putting few drops of lemon doesn't make it any better. So you have to ask your question, why am I putting these few drops of lemon? Unless you don't like the taste of water and you can't fast without those few drops of lemon, please don't do that. Okay, so let's talk about what Navratri is all about first, and then we'll discuss how to do Navratri fast and other things. So Navratri is, as we say, that Ma Durga comes every night in a different form to kill one of the demons. So who are these demons? These demons are within us. And let's go to slide 2. The next slide, Rakesh. All right. So here I have listed 9 demons that we are trying to conquer. These demons are within us. They have become part of our nature. Lust, anger, greed, pride, envy, gluttony, sloth, wrath, and delusion. This list varies from culture to culture, but in many cultures, they have some activities planned during year to win these demons within us. Now we know, and the science has demonstrated it, that when we live the normal life, consume the food that we do consume, our body creates toxins and waste. Now, some of this waste we remove by going to toilet every day and urinating and taking showers externally. But there are other toxins which remain in our body. When body metabolizes, when it does to the food what it needs to do, it creates byproducts. These byproducts can be toxic. Our body has 30 trillion cells, and each cell needs two things only. It needs nutrition, and then it needs to poop out. That's the one activity. And the second is it procreates, it multiplies and creates more cells. Let's call them the cell's children. So all cells, almost all cells, there are few cells which do not do that, like retina of our eye, or not the retina, but the cell of our eye, but very few. Otherwise, all cells have only two purposes in life. One, to survive, and second, to procreate, to multiply. So in the process of that multiplication, it creates certain toxins, certain proteins it creates, which are the byproduct. And some of these get detoxified, they get removed through our lymphatic system. Our body, we have two systems. We have a blood circulation system, which provides nutrients to every cell. And then we have a lymphatic system, which removes the garbage, the toxins. Now, you all know that if there is a strike and garbage is not being removed, it can make your life miserable. Just imagine the time when there were no flush toilets. At least these days, flush toilets keep working. But imagine the time when there were no flush toilets. If there was a strike by janitors, it'll make your life miserable. Similarly, if we do not remove the toxins from our body, the body's life can become miserable. And the body can die also. So fasting is a way to remove those toxins which otherwise don't get removed through the normal body processes of going to toilet, urinating, taking shower, and sweating. It is for this reason, in our culture, they have prescribed fasting every 2 weeks. We call it Ekadashi fast. If we fast every 2 weeks, the body gets to remove the toxins which were not removed on the daily fashion. The Ekadashi fast involves keeping whole day fast. After dinner on the first night, you keep fast on the whole day, the next day, and then day after the next day, you consume your normal breakfast. So it becomes a 36-hour fast. Now, Navratri fast is a 9-day fast, which we do when the season changes, when the crop has been harvested and the season is changing. People have time. They have harvested the crop successfully and the next crop has not yet started. So they have some time to relax and take it easy. And that's why the fast is recommended during the month of April and during the month of October. Okay, we'll move to the next slide. Okay, I normally cover the subject of health in a 2-month course, and many of you have been part of my health group, some of you may not. So I just wanted to explain that there are 5 pillars of life, of health, and food is first pillar of health, but detoxification is the second most important process that we need to do. And Navratri fast and Ekadashi fast, they both relate to detoxification. One other thing that we recommend in my courses is that we do a daily fast of 16 hours. We try and consume all our food in a narrow 8-hour eating window. This is how we evolved. Millions of years ago, there were no refrigerators, there were no storage. We used to move from one place to another. And in the morning, when we got up, there was no food to consume. We went out looking for food. Ladies and children went picking fruits from trees. Men went looking for maybe some leftover meat that a tiger or a lion or any other predator may have left the previous night. We were mostly scavengers. We did catch some small hunt like a chicken or a rabbit. When we came back, it was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock anyway. And then we cooked a meal and we had supper. In the evening, we tried to finish our meal before it got dark because we didn't have light or candles. Candles came much later. And even 150 years ago, people tried to finish their kitchen functions before it got dark outside. So eating was done by 6 o'clock latest. And Jain people have a custom which is called Chauvihar. Chauvihar meaning that you don't eat anything after you have finished dinner, and you try and finish your dinner around the sunset time. And then till next morning, you don't consume anything. So our body evolved on a 24-hour circadian rhythm, 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of night. Somehow, after the invention of electricity, we have forgotten about that custom, and now we keep eating till late at night. And especially in India, there's a very bad habit of having dinners at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And when people go out to eat, they're eating dinner at 11 or even midnight. Most weddings, they don't serve dinner till 11 o'clock. Our body was not designed for that. Our body gets confused when it receives food after it is dark outside. Body knows when it is daytime, in the morning, when we receive blue light reflected from the sky, our body knows that it's the morning time, and certain hormones are released at that time, cortisol hormones, which are the hormones that make you get up and go, and some other hormones decline in the morning, like melatonin. It rises in the evening after sunset, and it is a hormone that calms you down and makes you go to sleep. So when you keep eating food beyond darkness, your body gets confused, says, what's going on? I thought the day was over. I guess not. So the hormones it was supposed to release, it may put a hold on them. And the hormones it was supposed to stop releasing, it may continue releasing them. So we have known about it for some time, circadian rhythm. But in 2017, a Nobel Prize was given to scientists who demonstrated how our body's circadian clock works. We have a clock in our mind, in our brain, where hypothalamus is. Under the hypothalamus, we have a master clock. And that master clock tunes all other clocks. Every cell has a clock. So every cell out of 30 trillion cells has a clock which is embedded in our gene. And we have a gene, it's called period gene. And it's the gene that dictates the clock in each cell. It creates a protein called PER, PER. PER protein gets created in the nighttime. And in the morning, that protein is slowly spent till it runs out. So we have a circadian rhythm. We have been learning more and more about it. And it is important for good health to be in sync with the nature's clock. So circadian clock in our hypothalamus needs to be synchronized with the nature's clock. And it is for that reason it is important that we finish our dinner before it is dark and stop eating anything beyond that. So this daily process of fasting for 12 or more hours is very important for good health. So we're talking about three types of fasting here. One is the daily fasting, which we call intermittent fasting. Try to consume all your food in 8-hour window, preferably, but 10 hours is also fine, especially if you are unwell, if you are ill with hypertension or diabetes or cholesterol or asthma or arthritis or any chronic disease, then you should try to reduce your eating window to 8 hours. And that is known as intermittent fasting. Okay. So we discussed these things. I covered the subject because there are some new people in this audience. Let's move to the next slide, Rakesh. All right. Other factors for good health are emotional health and spiritual health. So these are the 5 pillars of health. All 5 are very important. When we do not detoxify our brain properly, it can lead to some emotional stress. And there are many diseases which are caused because of lack of detoxification. Our brain releases a certain protein as a byproduct called beta amyloid. And these proteins, if they are not removed regularly, which happens during deep sleep process. So when you go to deep sleep, your mind, your brain flushes these beta amyloids and pushes them into our lymphatic system. But if you are not getting proper deep sleep, these beta amyloids clog together. And like plaque, we talk about plaque in blood vessels, there is a plaque in brain also. And these things lead to diseases like dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease, which are diseases of our brain. So fasting during Navratri does a great job of detoxifying every cell in our body. And we'll talk about it shortly. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, for the benefit of those who have not been part of my group, one thing we emphasize is that the food should only be consumed in an unrefined and unprocessed form. So the question comes up, what is the difference between a processed and refined food? And I've taken an example here to communicate that point. And when you eat corn on the cob is the least refined food, it's the natural form. You take those corn kernels and freeze them, and then you make corn soup. It is still in a whole form. Freezing itself is not bad. Then you take dry corn and you make a meal out of that. That's corn meal. You process a little more. It becomes corn flour. Corn processed more becomes corn starch. You heat it. They used to heat it in sand. You can heat it in microwave and it becomes popcorn. So everything on this side of this table is whole food. It's just slightly more processed from the previous category. But on the right side, when you look at corn flakes, it is highly processed. Corn flakes is what you consume for breakfast. Mr. Kellogg invented corn flakes. And that was almost 100 years ago. And then he asked everybody to eat cornflakes for breakfast. And his secretary, who was probably the first dietitian, in an interview with a magazine, made a comment that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Of course, she was trying to push the product her boss made. And that's how that line came into our vocabulary. And you see a lot of people saying breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It is not. It is not necessary to have a meal at 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning. It is not necessary at all. And you can take your first meal at 10 o'clock or 11 or even at noon time. It's perfectly healthy and normal. Anyway, so coming back to the processed food, corn oil is refined food. When you make corn oil, you remove all the fiber. So the fiber has been removed, and one should not consume any oil whatsoever in a plant-based whole food diet. You can have peanuts, but not peanut oil. You can have mustard seeds, but not mustard oil. You can have corn, but not corn oil. Another product made out of corn is high fructose corn syrup, which is even more processed than corn oil. It's very inexpensive and it's very sweet. Corn has a lot of sweetness, a lot of sugar in it. And high fructose corn syrup is used to sweeten everything, everything you buy in a grocery store, and all the soft drinks use high fructose corn syrup. So I wanted to make a point that to live healthy, you want to consume food in its whole form and as close to natural form as you can. Any processes that you can do with your hand that our ancestors must have also done, like peeling, slicing, dicing, mashing, they all are okay. But processes which could not be done by you using primitive tools should be avoided. I'm not saying you don't use modern tools, but only use modern tools which achieve processes which you could do otherwise as well. So yes, you can use blenders. All right, so just a small lesson on what one should normally eat for healthy living. Let's move on to the next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, I'm showing how a typical Indian family, which calls itself a vegetarian, the kind of meals they have in a typical day. We start our day at 7 in the morning with some tea with milk and sugar and some rusk or biscuits. 9 o'clock, some breakfast with aloo paratha, with curd or poha or upma or idli, some sweet lassi or lemonade or another cup of tea. We have lunch with dal, sabji, raita, and roti or rice and some mithai. 4:30 in the evening, we'll have some snack like samosa or with tea or coffee or sharbat, rooh afza, or some kind of lemonade. Those who like to drink alcohol will have a session around 8 in the evening with some snacks, which may be chips or namkeen or fried cashews and some matti or things like that. And then dinner at 9:30. Chole or curried vegetable, dry vegetable, raita, roti, and some mithai. This is spelling mistakes. And then some people would even have a glass of milk before going to bed. This is a very unhealthy eating pattern. In this, as you can see on the right hand of this slide, almost 20 to 50% of the calories are coming from ghee, oil, and sugar, and another 10 to 20% from dairy. Now, dairy is also very unhealthy, and we spent 2-3 days discussing it as a part of the course. You know, all mammals, if you look around, nurse their newborn for only a few months. And once the newborn has its own teeth, they wean them, and then the child never consumes mother's milk. After that initial period of 3 months or 6 months, we are the only mammals on earth that continue to feed our children milk after we have weaned the child from mother's milk. The other observation is that no other mammal drinks some other species' milk. They only drink their mother's milk. But we are the only mammals that we drink other species' milk: cow's milk, buffalo's milk, goat's milk, camel's milk. It's a very unhealthy practice we have adopted and a source of many problems. The research has shown that the protein in milk, in cow's milk, causes cancer tumors to grow. This research was actually published by two Hyderabad doctors in 1967. Dr. Colin Campbell of Cornell University, when he saw that, he was so surprised that he thought the publisher had swapped the data. And he wrote to the publisher, and the publisher said, no, my data is correct. This is what these two scientists, Gopalan and Madhavan, were saying. So protein in milk is very unhealthy, and it causes tumor cells, foreign cells in our body, which are cancer cells, which, by the way, are present in 99% of the population. You can't escape them, and causes them to grow. So what we are looking here is that almost 1/3 to 2/3 of our calories coming from food which is unhealthy, which is practically empty calories, and that is the cause of most chronic problems. If only we could replace that 1/3 to 2/3 calories from some healthy food, your chronic illnesses will go away. And we experience that. I have over 23,000 members, and they all report improved health and getting off all medications for diabetes, hypertension, cholesterol, arthritis, COPD, asthma, and many other diseases, autoimmune diseases, etc. Let's move to the next slide. So what you see here, and I recommend people that to consume such food that you see here in this photograph. There are a lot of green leafy vegetables. There is kale, chard, there's celery, there's bottle gourd, the lettuce leaves, cucumber, lemon, ginger, beetroot, green apples, carrots, and licorice. Now, this is, if you can replace those 2/3 or half the calories which were coming from oil, sugar, and dairy, or ghee and oil, with this food, you will never have any health problem. You will not have any problem, any chronic problem. And I guarantee that. And so that is what we suggest people do. Some find it difficult to eat these things raw, and juicing is, that's why I'm saying juicing is one way. It is the second best option to eating them raw as salad. And if you take that juice, a glass of juice before every meal, 15 minutes before breakfast, 15 minutes before lunch, and 15 minutes before dinner, you will not have any health problems, and all health problems that you have will go away. Chronic problems, not problems you were born with, not congenital problems, but chronic problems. Okay, so let's move to the next chart. So I wanted to share with you that in 2016, Dr. Yoshinori received Nobel Prize for his research. Now, we had known at that time, based on research on mice, that those mice which are deprived of food for 1 day a week almost live 50% longer. Their lifespan increases by 50%. But how it works was not well known. And Dr. Yoshinori, his research demonstrated how it works. He explained that there is a process called autophagy. When body runs out of protein, it looks for that protein in other parts of the body where waste was being collected. And so every cell has like a trash can, and it's called lysosome. So when a cell has a waste protein, a spent protein, it keeps it in that trash can. When we fast and we run out of protein because no new food is coming, the body begins to recycle the waste it had stored in the waste bin. And this can be seen under microscope. Under powerful electron microscopes, you can see this happening. It's very amazing. Every cell in your body, of those 30 trillion cells, starts going through a process of autophagy. It begins around 18 hours, but it increases more as you reach 24 hours. And then it continues. So autophagy happens when there's shortage of protein. And it helps every cell detoxify itself. And that trash can becomes empty. It's kind of like you going through day before Diwali, we have what we call Narka Chaudas. We go through our house, we get rid of old clothes we don't wear anymore, which were clogging our closets. We donate them. We take out old maybe glasses. You know, you buy a set of 8 glasses and then they keep breaking and then you have only one left and doesn't match into anything. You go through your attics and do a deep cleaning. Of course, in India, we used to get a whitewash done. So the whole idea is you're cleaning your house of things which you do not need anymore, which are, if you don't clean them, then your closets get overloaded. You suddenly find that you're using your garage to store clothes and you're buying those $99 white laminate closets from a Scandinavian design, and suddenly your garage becomes your secondary closet. So a cleaning once in a while is very good. And Navratri fast provides you that opportunity to clean the dead cells, the damaged cells, and the trash can inside each cell. The 2018 Nobel Prize also went to this subject, and Dr. Honzo demonstrated. So the focus was extended fast for him, that when we keep extended fast, the stress caused by deprivation of protein makes human cells resistant to cancer. And cancer treatments like chemotherapy and radiation are more successful because they are no longer killing our healthy cells, they're only killing the cancer cells. And it also provides immunity. So if you would do Navratri fast every year, even if it is only once a year, you are likely to not suffer from cancer. That's the whole idea here. There are a lot of chronic illnesses which have started progressing can be reversed if you would keep that fast once a year. That is what Dr. Honzo recommends that one should do. He recommends 10 days, the same thing. That one should do a 10-day fast once or twice a year. So both of these pieces of information from 2016 Nobel Prize, 2018 Nobel Prize, somehow our ancestors knew or they were aware of it. That is why they prescribed the 3 things which are very important. One, a daily fasting for 12 to 16 hours. a Ekadashi fasting every 2 weeks of 36 hours, and once a year Navratri fast for 9 days. Now, it is difficult to keep 9-day fast without consuming anything. So, what is recommended, what the science recommends, what Dr. Honzo recommends, is that you consume a light meal, only one meal of 500 calories or less, and choose your meal so that it is very low in protein. The whole idea is to leave your body in a stressed stage for 9 days. And the body goes into a stressed stage when it does not receive any protein. That is what we are talking about. We're talking about depriving body of protein in diet for a stretch of 9 days. By allowing you to consume some 500 calories, it makes the process easy. Of course, if you do the fast without consuming any food, as Jains do a fast once a year, where, and in fact, it ended just about 3 weeks ago, where they don't take any food for 8 days. And that is the healthiest fast. And Navratri fast can also be done without consuming any food. Excuse me. But it is a little difficult for people who do not have healthy eating habits, because we develop addictions. People don't realize, but of course, everybody is aware of the fact that alcohol is addictive and tobacco and smoking is addictive. Similarly, your tea and coffee is addictive as well. So when you do not get tea at the time you normally take it, you develop headache within 2-3 hours. And you can't focus on your work. So tea and coffee are addictive. Similarly, there are other foods which are addictive. Fat is addictive. Cheese, which is very high in fat. Chocolate is addictive. French fries are addictive. So there are food addiction as well. So if you're going to be keeping fast for the first time, you're going to have difficulties. You will, if your normal eating time is 9 o'clock, then by 10:30, 11, you will start having headache and other problems. And so if you want to keep the fast and that caffeine problem is not allowing you to go to toilet, I say, okay, you can have some tea or coffee. Not that I recommend it, but if the choice is between breaking the fast or keeping the fast with some black tea without cream and sugar or black coffee, it is fine. It is harmful to your stomach. Taking black coffee, empty stomach, is one of the cause for ulcers. But at this time, if the choice is between completing 9-day fast or having slight damage by having black tea, I think the slight damage having black tea is preferred over not having the 9-day fast. Okay, so we'll move on. Next slide, please. Okay, so what I'm talking here is what happens to your body when you deprive body of any food. So there are 8 different stages your body goes through. Your body has an ability to store some sugar in the form of glycogen. About 100 grams of sugar is stored in liver, and 400 grams of sugar is stored in our muscles. So the sugar which is stored in our liver runs out within 12 hours. So if you finish your dinner previous night at 7 o'clock, by next morning, 7 o'clock, the sugar in your liver runs out. When your body runs out of glucose, body gives a signal to the brain and body begins to burn the fat. The fat is stored under your skin. That's the place for storage of energy. And generally, most of us have enough fat stored to last us 4 to 6 months. The longest fasting done, the record is 382 days. So this fellow was able to fast on water only for 382 days. Okay. He obviously lost about 150 pounds of weight, which was the fat. But the point I'm trying to emphasize is that when you fast, your body, after 12 hours, starts to burn fat. Now, when body burns fat, there are certain ketone bodies are generated in place of glucose, and your brain runs on ketone bodies instead of running on glucose. And that is a signaling mechanism to the brain that there's shortage of food. And it starts several processes to adapt to the shortage of food, and one of which is the recycling of waste protein, using that protein. So, but the stage one is the body moves its metabolic mechanism from glucose burning to fat burning. If you do intermittent fasting, you will go through this process every day for 3-4 hours. If you are on a 16-hour fasting window and you go into ketosis at the 12th hour, so you have 4 additional hours of burning fat. That's why daily intermittent fasting helps lose weight. Because when you are burning ketone fat to produce ketone bodies, the brain increases your metabolic rate. To do the same activity, for example, to walk the same 1 mile, if normally you spend 100 calories, during intermittent fasting, you will spend 110 calories. So even if you keep eating whatever you have been eating, but you reduce your eating window to only 8 hours, you will begin to lose weight. Second stage, at 18 hours, when the ketone levels go up in your body, it signals the body to stress busting pathways to reduce inflammation and repair DNA damage. So these are the detoxification processes, rejuvenation processes I am talking about, and your body begins to do those, repair the DNA damage and reduce the inflammation. When we cross the 24-hour mark, now autophagy is at its peak, but this is autophagy from the trash can within each cell. So it's looking for the food, it's looking for protein in that trash can. It takes that protein, converts it into amino acids, and puts those amino acids into the blood, which circulate to all the 30 trillion cells. So that is the cleaning process that's going on, called autophagy. When you reach 36-hour mark, so now all the cells have been cleaned up, and your protein is still not coming. So at that time, the autophagy moves on to other cells which are in between the cells. Now it is not inside each cell. It is damaged cells which are sitting in between healthy cells. You know, a lot of your wrinkles in your skin is because of those damaged cells. It begins to, there's a cell we call senescent cells. Senescent cells are those cells which are not killed, but they have stopped reproducing. So, so they sit in between healthy cells and they secrete certain chemicals which when they come in contact with healthy cells, they make them also damaged cells. If you all have bought strawberry baskets and sometimes put them in your freezer, in your refrigerator, and it's deep inside and you forget that there were a basket of strawberries, you take it out after 2-3 weeks, you find that strawberries have developed fungus. If you do one experiment and you buy a fresh basket of strawberries and remove from the top 6-7 strawberries and take one damaged fungus strawberries, put it there, and then cover it with fresh strawberries again, and then look at it after 1 day or 2 days, you will find that the 4 or 5 strawberries which were in contact with the rotten strawberry also get damaged. The part of the fresh strawberry which was in contact with that rotten strawberry develops that fungus. The same thing happens in our body. The 4 or 5 cells which are surrounding a senescent cell also get damaged by the secretion of that senescent cell. So at this stage, your body begins to recycle those senescent cells. It's a great process. It's a rejuvenating process. People who keep these fast every 2 weeks or Navratri fast every 1 year or twice a year will find that your skin becomes smoother. Your wrinkles decline. Of course, there's only so much you can achieve. But just imagine if you did that throughout your life, you will have a shiny, smooth skin, even when you are 75-year-old. Okay. So that's the process that's going on at 36 hours. At 48 hours, the growth hormones in our body, which get released while we are fasting, they reach their highest level. They're almost at 5 times the level before you started fasting. So within 48 hours, your growth hormones are at the highest level. And when you are removing all these damaged cells, you also need to create new cells. So for those new cell creation, you need growth hormones. And that is what the body is doing, is preparing itself to, when you start eating food again, to make new cells. At 54 hours, our insulin level drops to the lowest point. So when the insulin is at the low point, the body becomes more insulin sensitive, which helps people who are diabetic or pre-diabetic. Diabetes is a disease of insulin resistance. As we live our life from the age 2, when we start eating with our parents on a dining table, and we are fed the food that parents have been eating, the milk, a cow's milk comes into our diet, the eggs come into our diet, the oil and sugar comes in our diet, we start developing a resistance to insulin. So maybe we develop 1% resistance, 2% resistance. It doesn't bother us. We have enough capacity in our pancreas to release insulin, and they just release more insulin and make up for it. So our body knows how to compensate. But by the age of 40, 45, when you realize that, okay, about 1/3 of my insulin receptors in my muscle cells have now been clogged with fat, and pancreas cannot release any more insulin, your sugar level begins to rise. Okay. So your body is always compensating. Initially, it compensates by increasing more insulin. Your blood sugar remains normal. And then somewhere at age 40, 45, 50, body cannot produce any more insulin and sugar begins to rise. And then arbitrarily at one point they say, now your sugar level is high enough that we'll call you pre-diabetic. That cutoff point is arbitrary because disease always happens in a continuum. It's happening every day. From age 2 onwards, your body has started becoming slowly resistant to insulin. Okay. And then they decide that, okay, if your morning blood sugar reaches 126 or higher, you are now a diabetic patient. Those cutoff points are arbitrary. We'll discuss it more a little later. Okay, so this is how your body reverses your diabetes problem, and that is what is going on at 54 hours. You have reached the lowest point. It is at the peak. That benefit is at the peak at that time. It's not that it wasn't happening at 48 hours. It was happening, but it reaches the peak point by reducing the insulin level to the lowest point. At 72 hours, your breakdown of old immune cells. So our body has immune cells which help our immunity to infectious diseases, immunity to cancer, and many other diseases. So at that time, once the 3 days are over, body begins to generate new immune cells which are more powerful and stronger. And that is how we build immunity. So clearly, Navratri fast or any other fast that you may keep for 3 days, 4 days, will help you build immunity to even COVID-19. And it has been well established. The people who eat healthy diet, live a healthy lifestyle, follow intermittent fasting and regular fasting every 2 weeks, have a stronger immunity to COVID than public at large. The 8th stage is the refeeding stage. This is when you break your fast. Of course, for Navratri fast, we'll be breaking it every day. But when you keep a longer fast, or that Jain fast that we were talking about, the refeeding is a very critical stage, and you should not consume a lot of food. In fact, a rule of thumb is if you're keeping fast for X number of days, your refeeding process should involve half of the X. So if you're keeping fast for 4 days, your refeeding program should be a 2-day program. And in that Jain fast of 8 days, they should be breaking that fast over a 4-day process before they go back to their normal daily meal. Okay, so this was the most important slide that I wanted to get across in today's talk. Because a lot of people don't know why they are keeping. They know it body detoxifies. But if you're going to consume an apple at 10 o'clock in the morning or a cup of tea with sugar, your ketosis will not start because you have not had 12 hours without food. If ketosis does not start or is broken, then rest of the 7 stages will not be achieved because that is the most important stage. And the body needs to be in a stress mode. And that is why when we keep Navratri fast, your meal should be a light meal. I mean, you can eat 2000 calories at 6 o'clock in the evening. There are a lot of people, a lot of spiritual people eat one meal a day, every day, all their life. But they don't lose weight necessarily because they eat a sufficient meal. If they need 2000 calories, they consume 2000 calories over a 1 hour window, eating window. So in Navratri fast, you should try to consume all your meal within a 1 hour eating window. The meal should only be 500 calories so that the body does remain or achieves ketosis again. So 500 calories will get burned out very quickly. The calories are used to replenish your muscles with glucose, and then only extra calories left after replenishing muscles are stored in your liver as glycogen. So during Navratri fast, those 500 calories will be quickly replenishing your glucose in your muscles, and your liver is not likely to get the 100 grams, which is 400 calories. So you would remain in ketosis mode most of the time during this 8-day fast. Let's move to the next slide. I hope this point is clear. Okay, next slide. So here I have described a suggested meal plan for Navratri meals. You need to have some green vegetables. They are very good for you. They are the ones which will help reduce your blood pressure, because green leafy vegetables have nitrates and they release nitric oxide, which act as a drainer that you use to clean your kitchen sink. When your kitchen sink gets clogged, you first try to use some chemical compound, some liquid to clean it. So green leafy vegetables provide nitric oxide, which works like a Drano or a roto-rooter. So if you have a half a pound, which would be about 260 grams, that will provide you about 50 calories. Then some low protein fruits. Now, some fruits are very low in protein, like apple or pears. Some fruits are very high in protein, like guavas. Obviously, you don't want to eat guavas while fasting. You want to eat apples or pears or grapefruit, fruits which are low in protein. That is what you want to eat. Starchy vegetables like potatoes, arbi, sweet potatoes, you want to consume them. They are fairly low in protein. Protein is about 5.5% in potatoes, and you can mix them in your meal. So that's what I recommend. Any of those three, potatoes, sweet potatoes, or arbi, or whatever you call it. We call it in English, it's known as taro root. Taro root should be taken. Then tapioca. Surprisingly, tapioca or sabudana is totally devoid of protein. There is no protein at all. By that I mean it's less than 0.1%. Okay, so sabudana is an ideal meal for fast. It just amazes, how did our ancestors know that? I have absolutely no clue. Obviously, they were smart enough and they figured out, and it perplexes me how they figured out that sabudana is the only thing which is devoid of protein. It's very hard to find food in the plant kingdom which is devoid of protein. So try to consume your meal made of sabudana. Sabudana cooks better, all sabudana recipes, if there are some ground peanuts are added to that. So I have included peanuts, just enough, maybe 1 or 2 teaspoon peanuts. So I've written 1/4 ounce there. And you can use them, grind them, and put them into your sabudana khichdi or sabudana tikya, and whatever use you want to do. Flaxseed, one must eat every day because of omega-3. We discussed that in our normal health course. But during Navratri, you can just have 1 teaspoon, because flaxseed or chia seed are very rich in calories. So instead of taking full tablespoon, just have 1 teaspoon. Now for cooking, I do not recommend oil ever. For people who are trying to reverse their diseases, should not use any oil at all and any sugar at all. But during Navratri meal, it is even more difficult because oil is very rich in calories. 1 teaspoon of oil would be almost 42 calories. So please use vegetable stock. And you must use spices. They are very good for you. They are very rich in antioxidants. So they help with the detoxing process. And use your normal spices, turmeric, rye, red pepper, black pepper, whatever you like. So whatever I have recommended, they all add up to about 500 calories, and that should be your daily meal plan. The total protein in this meal plan is only 15 calories, which is 3% of the 500 calories. Now, you have some other options. You can replace on few days tapioca with kuttu flour or barnyard millet. They are richer in protein, so your protein will become, instead of 3%, almost 5-6%. But even that is okay if you feel you cannot have sabudana every day and you don't like it or whatever. You can replace it with kuttu flour and barnyard millet. Don't use rajgir. Rajgir is very high in protein, almost 15%. So don't use that. Avoid eating food after it is dark outside. So try to finish your meals by 5:30 or so. Avoid any physical workout after dark. It will upset your circadian rhythm. Your body will get confused. Why am I working out? Is it still daytime that I'm working out? And then other things which are important is that you must pray daily. That you pray is important. Who you pray to is not important. If you if you are Hindu, pray to Durga Ma. If you have reverence for Durga Ma. If you are Christian, pray to Jesus Christ. Even Christians can benefit from this fast, and Muslims can benefit from this fast as well. So the fast is for everyone from health perspective. So the whole idea of praying is that you want to have a sense of gratitude. When you feel gratitude, it flushes your body with certain hormones, which are very good for your health. And the last point I have here is that you avoid blue light emitting screens like TV or computer monitors or cell phone at night time, and definitely 1 hour before you go to sleep. On your cell phone, you can set a setting for blue light filter. You can set it automatically so that after 8 o'clock, your blue light filter comes on and you will not receive any blue light. Do that for throughout the year and definitely during Navratri meal plan, Navratri fast. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to briefly discuss chronic diseases and show you how these fasts can achieve that. Let's skip to the next slide. Here I have listed 10 leading causes of death in US. It pretty much applies the same worldwide. Cancer and lung problems may be higher than heart disease because still a lot of people are smoking around the world. In US, smoking has been cut down, so lung diseases have become number 3. But heart diseases, cancer, lung diseases, strokes and cerebrovascular diseases, Alzheimer's, diabetes, influenza and pneumonia, kidney diseases, liver diseases, and hypertension. These are the leading chronic diseases. These are the causes of death throughout the world. And I'll show you how we can cure these diseases by, of course, healthy plant-based whole food diet, but also by fasting regularly. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, so what I'm trying to show here is that the disease, chronic diseases, lie on a continuum. I discussed that briefly earlier for diabetes. So if you look at the middle of this S curve, it is almost a straight line, the middle portion. So body moves on that straight line up and down. One day you eat healthy, it comes down. One day you eat some unhealthy food and you had dahi ki lassi, it becomes a little bit unhealthy, but it keeps moving up and down. You do a fast every 2 weeks. So if you were eating some unhealthy things during the 13, 14 days, by keeping that fast, you pull the body back into the healthy range. And that is why daily fasting of 16 hours is very important. It kind of makes up for some unhealthy eating, little bit of 1 or 2 teaspoons of sugar and 1 or 2 teaspoons of oil or ghee can be made up by that 16 hours of daily fasting. And then every 2 weeks, when you do Ekadashi fasting, it can again pull you back if you are reaching on the curve portion of the curve on the top, where I have written disease. You can come back to the middle portion. So that's what the fasting does. It's amazing how it creates a balance. It allows to compensate for some of your mischiefs and misbehavior and eating a unhealthy food here and there. Now, once you reach, if you don't do those fasts and you don't do any offsetting mechanism in a regular diet and lifestyle, you reach the top when your body begins to show symptoms. Symptoms only begin to show when body cannot make up and compensate anymore. And that's when we say that, okay, I have got hypertension. Our blood pressure increases throughout life, a little bit at a time. And then it reaches 130, 135, 140, and we say, okay, you are now hypertension. Those markers are arbitrary. They are decided by doctors or leading institutions, certain committees which decide that we will call a blood pressure of 140 as hypertension and under 130 as healthy, and they're all arbitrary, okay, as we'll see further. So this is how chronic diseases operate. Let's move next slide. Okay, so there's a phenomena called J curve. It is also called hockey curve, and hockey is probably a better explanation than J. What we are talking here is that we all know that all medicines have side effects. So if we take too much medication, we are hurting our bodies. And we don't really know how we are hurting our bodies, but we do know that medicines have negative side effects. Some of these get declared on the piece of paper that comes with your medicine, because the doctors or the researchers or the pharmaceutical company was forced to declare 3 or 4 side effects. But for every 3 or 4 side effects that they were forced to declare, you can be rest assured that there were others, 16, 17, that they could get away with. They did not happen on everybody, happened on only very few cases. And these side effects happen differently on different people because we all are different. We may be similar genetically, but we are very different epigenetically. We live in different households, we eat different foods, we eat the food that our parents ate. So a lot of things we attribute to genes really has nothing to do with genes. All it has to do with is how you were raised. And if your mom and dad ate certain food, you ate certain food. And you develop certain similar diseases. So they were not caused by genes. We have a tendency to blame too many things on our genes, but it really doesn't work that way. Genes may load the gun, but you always have the trigger. And when you pull the trigger, the disease happens. So we know that disease is harmful, the higher blood pressure is harmful, higher blood sugar is harmful. It is hurting our body in ways we may not fully understand. But we also know that taking high doses of medicine is harmful. So there's a balance somewhere in between. And that balance is where the bottom of the J is. So scientists and doctors have begun to believe now that controlling our symptoms too tightly is not very good for us. If you control your blood pressure too tightly and keep it under 120/80, it is very unhealthy. And they have a concept called all-cause mortality. Death due to any cause or all causes combined. So they say that if you control your symptoms too tightly, your all-cause mortality will go up. And if you don't control your symptoms at all, your all-cause mortality will also go up. So if you were to draw a curve, you will see a J happening. And that is what we call J curve. So lately, in last decade or two, many senior doctors have started expressing their opinion that we have gone too far. Taking medications for chronic diseases, which were caused by diet and lifestyle issues, is not appropriate. And we really should try to address these diet and lifestyle diseases by changing diet and lifestyle. Something the doctors don't tell you, and something the doctors are not taught. They're only taught medicine. They are not taught nutrition, so they don't know. And how can they tell you what they do not know? And that is what we are talking here, a J curve phenomena. So diabetes guidelines were revised by American College of Physicians, which is a much larger body than American Diabetes Association or the Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, the specialists that you go and see for diabetes. But the American College of Physicians moderated their guidelines to reduce use of medication. Similarly, for blood pressure, the Joint National Committee, which used to decide the cutoff point in 2014 revision, they said we should not control blood pressure too tightly. Unfortunately, your doctors are not aware of them, or they pretend that they are not aware of them, because nobody wants their clients to go away. If you cure your hypertension and cure your diabetes, then they have lost a patient and it reduces their income. So let's look at the next slide. So here are the guidelines that that show the J curve. You can see the J curve happening. This is a study that was done in 2009, 2008, 9, and 10, and it was published in 2010. But most doctors did not act on it. It shows that if you are taking oral medication for diabetes, you reach the lowest all-cause mortality if your A1C is between 7.5 and 8.2. Okay, the lowest point is between 7.5 and 8.2. So based on that, finally, American College of Physicians conceded in 2019 that we should try to maintain for diabetic patients who are on medication A1C under 8 or 8.2 and not under 7 as American Diabetes Association says, or under 6.5. In fact, if you see the chart, a 6.5 A1C is as bad as an A1C of 9.7 or 9.8. So if your A1C is 9.7 with low dose of medication or no dose of medication, but it is 6.5 with high dose of medication, you are better off not taking that medication, because that high dose of medication is making you as likely to die as that low dose of medication. The same thing is, the curve is steeper for those who are taking insulin. So if you're taking insulin and your A1C is 6.5, that is as bad as not taking insulin and having an A1C of 10.5. You can see the 6.5 and 10.5 in the same line. They are equally harmful or beneficial, whatever you want to say. So if you can have the same level of benefit without insulin by keeping it at 10.5, why take insulin and keep it at 6.5? Because insulin has many other problems, okay? And we don't have time to discuss that. We discuss such subjects under our normal course. This was a very large study, 28,000 patients. And the study had to be stopped because too many people who were taking insulin were dying because of that high insulin dosages. And so they had to tell them, they had said it would be unethical to continue this study, and they had to stop that study sooner. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, a lot of people talk to me and say, how about Ayurveda, and shouldn't one be taking Ayurvedic medicine? I put this slide here just to make a point that as per Ayurveda, when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. And when diet is correct, medicine is of no need. So taking Ayurvedic medicine is a contradiction in itself. You must live healthy and you should not take any medicine, whether Ayurvedic or allopathic or homeopathic. The whole concept of taking medicine is flawed. You must let the food be your medicine. That is the whole idea. And the food needs to be plant-based whole food. When you have plant-based whole food, you're eating in a narrow eating window of 8 hours every day. You're remaining physically active, walking 10,000 steps a day, as the human body was intended, and fasting every 2 weeks and once a year for 8 days, you will not be sick. And this is the feedback I have received from about 23,000 members, and they all report. Most of them who follow, some don't follow or make too many exceptions, which is a different problem altogether. All right, next slide. Now, this is what is happening to your arteries, your blood vessels. If you are eating plant-based food, you don't see any plaque on the internal lining of blood vessels. When you eat vegetarian food and you add dairy and yogurt and cheese to your food, you develop inflammation and plaque begins to develop, but not too much. If you are a meat eater, a lot of plaque develops, okay, because the food causes inflammation. To cure inflammation, the blood needs cholesterol. It's like a malham, a ointment. When your child falls and scratches his knee, you put an ointment on that knee to make it heal. That is similarly, your body puts a ointment of cholesterol when a food which is inflammatory is causing inflammation in your blood vessel lining. So I've demonstrated that this is how blood pressure increases. When the effective opening goes down to circulate same amount of blood, you have to increase the pressure, and that's what your body does. It compensates because it cannot allow blood circulation to go down. Blood has to be circulated to provide nutrition to every cell. So it just simply compensates by increasing blood pressure. When you do eat those leafy green vegetables, they act as roto-rooter and they clean your blood vessels' internal lining, and it clears up. And within 3 to 6 months, in fact, you will see blood pressure go down within 2 weeks. Those people who are doing Navratri fasting should be able to see their blood pressure go down by the 9th day. Of course, after the 9th day, they still should continue eating healthy food. They can have 3 meals a day, but they all should be healthy meals. Otherwise, the plaque will come back up. So this is how blood pressure increases. Next slide, please. So this is the blood pressure guidelines. There was a committee that was established back in 1970s, a joint national committee which came up with recommendations for blood pressure guidelines. In 2014, the last time the committee met, they came up with the guidelines. They became more lenient. This is all that realization that I talked about as the J curve or hockey curve. And they said that for people who are under the age of 60, your normal BP is 140/90. So if your BP is 140/90 or less, you should not be taking medication. If you're taking medication, that medication is increasing the chances of death by all causes. So your all-cause mortality will increase if you are taking medication while your BP is under 140/90. Now, I know for sure the many who are attending this talk are in that situation. You are taking medication because your doctor has not told you about this. Okay. And when and then if you're over 60, your normal is 150 over 90. And a lot of people who come to me and my groups, they say that they're taking medication and they're maintaining a BP level of 125 over 85 or something like that, which is quite ridiculous, frankly. And so if you can get this message, please read about it. And I can assure that most people after Navratri fast, if you follow the fast properly, you will come within this range. If you're over 60, your BP will come under 150 over 90. If you're under 60, it'll be under 140 over 90. Next slide, please. Here is the revised guidelines, which were issued on March 6, 2018. American College of Physicians recommends moderate blood sugar control targets for most patients with type 2 diabetes. Patients with type 2 diabetes should be treated to achieve an A1C between 7 and 8 rather than 6.5. Now, between 7 and 8, so the question is if 7 and 8, anything between 7 and 8 is equally good, why just bring it down to 7 by extra medication? Just bring it to 8.0 or 7.9 with least amount of medication or without medication. So this is what I was referring to, and you can Google it and read more about it. Next slide, please. So this is the conflicting diabetes guidelines. When ACP came with this guideline, of course, the business for the patients of doctors who are diabetes specialists, a lot of them are endocrinologists, a lot of them are members of American Diabetes Association. So American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, AACE, got very nervous. They said, this is going to reduce the income of all our members to half. Half the patients will become non-patients. So they came out within 4 days. Look at that. March 5th, within 1 week, on March 12th, they said, no. We will insist on following our guidelines, which is 6.5. Okay. So a lot of politics happens. I spend normally 1 week discussing politics of health and how decisions get made. Nobody is interested in the consumer's health. Everybody has their own agenda. The food processing industry wants to sell more processed food. The pharmaceutical industry wants to sell more medications and procedures. American Medical Association or other associations of doctors want to have more patients. They want to have you go visit them 3-4 times a year so that they can collect their $200 per visit from their insurance company. So everybody is looking after their own clientele. So ADA is looking after the doctors which are member of ADA. AACE is looking after clinical endocrinologists who are member. These associations are not formed to improve the health of public at large. They're formed to benefit their members. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so I'll conclude my talk with following comments. Causes of all chronic diseases is diet and lifestyle. That is the only cause. Okay. So when you change diet and lifestyle, the disease reverses. As simple as that. Okay. It is easier than you think. In my groups, people are getting off medications in 2 weeks. Okay. You need to eat plant-based whole food diet. you need to do a 16 to 8 intermittent fasting. That means eat all your food within an 8-hour eating window. If you're healthy, you can make it 10 hours. But if you are sick and you're trying to reverse the disease, eat it within 8 hours or even within 6. At our home, we finish our food within a 6-hour eating window. We start eating at 12 and we finish dinner by 6. Every 2 weeks, do Ekadashi fasting. You can do every week also. That would be even better. As I told you, the research had shown that all mice which were deprived of food every week lived 50% longer and healthier. Once or twice a year, do Navratri fasting. Stay active by walking 10,000 steps each day. Now, I have a Facebook group. I start that on the 1st of every month. So the Facebook group for November has already been formed. You can go to Facebook and request if you are interested in knowing more about health and how to reverse chronic diseases. You can join that group. Also, I create WhatsApp groups on 1st of each month. And for WhatsApp group, I have put down my phone number. You can send me a message requesting a link to the November WhatsApp group, and I will send you that link. And with that, I think I finished my talk. I don't know if we have time for questions. Rakesh, were you planning to have questions? We have taken 1.5 hours, which normally is how long the talk takes, but I leave it to you.
Lalitji, my suggestion would be that if you think it's okay, we can ask all the participants to put in their name, their email address, city and state. This way we can share the recording with them by email. We can send them an email, or we can also share it on WhatsApp. And for Q&A, I think because this is already an hour and a half, a little more than an hour and a half, I think if people can say share the Q&A on the chats, I'll leave the chats open for a while. Then at the next talk, we can take those questions and then put them into some sort of a form.
Yeah, and many of the members are in my group. I created a group which is a Navratri fast group. So I think we have about 1,500 members in that already, and so they can ask their questions in the group in the chat. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody, and I wish you happy Navratri. Please keep the fast if you can, and eat healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lalitji. Thank you so much for your help.
Bye-bye.
Okay, I'll leave the screen on so that the people can share chat as much as you want for another 10 minutes or so. And I will make sure that once I have your email address, we'll put your part in a database. For the next program, we will also notify you. This is our intent. Okay, thank you again. I'll leave this window open, but I'll stop the recording.